good, and we'll swing this thing back into place. Okay. All right. So that is where it needs to be. Looks like it's working the way it's supposed to. Place that where it goes. So, kind of back to where we started before the starter rope broke. So, I checked the linkage earlier, and it looks like the springs, the governor mechanism, all appear to be functioning. I don't see any real issues with that. Throttle seems to be good, so I don't see any real issues with that. Still should be plenty of gas in here, yep. So no problem there. Everything else seems to be hooked back up. I'm going to try and get us a tug, see what we get. I am going to hit it with a little starter fluid. Let's see what we get on this shot. Okay, this is what I was getting before. So I get a partial start out of it. I was just adjusting the choke a little bit there. Now I did notice that when I bought this lawnmower used last year, and it had a rebuilt carburetor on it, but I don't think the carburetor is the issue. Like I said, I mean, I left it out, so I know that it's probably gummed up and things like that. But all in all, as long as all of the springs and everything were correctly put back when they put this carburetor on, we should be good. But I don't know what's missing if I don't know what's missing, you know, if there was anything gone from the get-go. It appears that most of the springs and everything are intact, so I guess we kind of have to go with that. So again, I feel like you know, we're getting everything else, we're not getting fuel. Give us a shot one more time. Now, I'm going to dig back into this carburetor and see if we can figure out what's going on there. It's been sitting, they tend to gum up. It was full of gasoline. Again, shame on me. Before you winterize them, you should let them run completely out of gas. and or put some kind of stabilizer in it. I prefer to let them completely run out of gas. I prefer to have the carburetors completely dry. That's just my my way of doing it. But if there's carburetor sitting in that bowl for months and months and months and months and it doesn't move, it tends to gum up. And there's a lot of very small, intricate passages in that carburetor that fuel has to flow through. It can't do if it's gummed up with a bunch of gook. So that's kind of where we're going next. See if we can make some headway from that. Okay, there are three primary bolts on this carburetor that need to be removed. Now, I took the throttle cable off also, but these three bolts are, two of them are right directly on the carburetor and the other one is right next to it, but they're all accessible from inside this air cleaner housing. That piece is out of the way. This is the carburetor itself. Alright. This part gets a little messy, obviously, because we're about to pull this fuel line. Okay, two primary bolts on this carburetor itself. Okay. Now, there we go. Okay, so there's the carburetor assembly itself. It looks good because obviously it's rebuilt, it's new. So I'm going to we're going to dive into this and see if we can figure out what the issue was. So there's fuel coming out, so that tells me that the bowl probably had some fuel in it. So that's a good sign. We have to figure out why we're not getting from the bowl into the actual carburetor and into the intake. So that's the next step. So we're going to disassemble this, and I'm going to push the mower back out of the way, and then we're going to dive into the carburetor itself here in a second. Okay, starting on this carburetor then. We're going to flip it over, and we're going to remove this bolt. And you can see it's still dripping, so again, that's a good sign. That means we're getting fuel into the carburetor bowl itself. We can kind of figure out where we have to go to from there. So this bolt comes out. There's a washer on it. Be careful not to lose it. Now, I'm going to try to put, you know, everything kind of back in that bowl as best I can, because I don't want to lose anything. So this is the float assembly, and I don't know how well you can see that. I'll try and get a little closer to it, but you can see as the fuel level changes, fuel coming in from the inlet here, the float is gonna sink when it's empty, and then it's gonna fill up, and then it'll shut off. Well, there's a needle valve right there that is moving with the float. So as it fills up, it shuts off. This little pin slides out like that. Then the float assembly pops off. Be careful not to lose this needle valve. Okay, it fits right up in here like so, and like I said, every time this moves, the needle valve moves. So we're going to put the needle valve in there, we're going to put the float in there. We're going to back to this assembly. Now, a couple of things. Let's see here. Wait a second. Grab one of my tools. This is what I was looking for. I mentioned earlier that the passageways within a carburetor are pretty small, so this is just a paper clip that I've straightened out. It works pretty good for that. There'd be a number of different things you could use. First thing I wanted to check was to make sure that, you know, this is where the needle and seat goes. So any incoming gas is coming from here. So it's coming from the tank in this way, and then it comes through this passage down in the bottom here, and the needle sits down on this little seat here in the bottom, and the needle and seat goes up and down as the float goes up and down. So at any rate, this bowl had fuel in it, so that in and of itself led me to believe that this passage was open. You know, it's coming from the fuel tank, it's coming into the carburetor, it's filling up the carburetor bowl, but from there I don't know exactly what's going on, because that's where part of the issue has been. So what I did find is that this passage here, give me a second, I can try to show it here. Okay, so when the fuel comes in, let's get this piece out of the way here. When the fuel comes in, and it gets into the fuel bowl here, it has to go into this channel right here that the paper clip is in, which goes all the way up inside the main throttle portion of the carburetor. So what happens when these things sit for long periods of time, like I mentioned earlier, this passage and the one here, they plug up because they get a bunch of crap in them. And so I took the paper clip, I ran it up in here, and okay, I don't know if you'll be able to see that very well from the video, but you can see that passage is clear now. I can push that paper clip through. It was not clear initially, so that tells me that while I was getting fuel into the bowl, it wasn't working its way up through this passage, and it wasn't delivering fuel into the engine. So that's clear now, so that's not an issue. That's open there. It's open here, so that shouldn't be a problem. This bolt that goes in the end also plays a part in this whole thing. You can see there's a little notch here. And so when this thing is screwed in and the bowl is on it, it goes into a certain depth. But what happens is this whole thing is filled with gasoline, right? So the gasoline has to get into that area in order for it to go up into the top of the carburetor and feed fuel to the engine. So part of that comes in here around this notch. The fuel is getting in and around that. Let me take this back out. And you can see how this thing is tapered. So you can see it better with the washer off of it. But you can see how this is tapered, and so the fuel goes around. This part here and goes through here. Another really tiny passage. So you got to make sure this passage is clear, because guess what? If this passage is plugged up, then it's not going to allow any fuel into that area, and we have the exact same problem. Additionally, these two passages are tied together, so the fuel comes in here. You know, if you could see it, you won't be able to see it from this video, but you can see where that paper clip goes through. Well, these two passages tie into each other. This passage here goes down and interconnects into this crossways patches in a T. So even if you're getting fuel to here and this part here is clear, if you have any pluggage here, which I did have, I had some issue here. I cleaned this out already, right? But that's another part of the problem. So part of the problem was it was gummed up here. It was gummed up in this passage here in the carburetor itself, both of which will prevent any fuel flow once it gets into the carburetor bowl. So that's an issue. So both of those have been cleaned out now. We're going to put this all back together, and hopefully that will rectify this issue with fuel and it not starting. So I'll go ahead and put this back together, and then we'll move on to the next step. Carburetor is reassembled. Now we're going to go back on with it. Linkage in first. It's easier to do it while the carburetor is off than it is to try to put it up on there after the fact. Okay. Fuel line was leaking on me. I wanted to just kind of get it out of the way. Not a lot of torque on these. They're small boats. You don't want to snap them off. Okay. Let's see here. All right. Let's get this fuel line hooked back up. Okay. This is the tube that's supposed to let you prime it. That tube goes into here, which is right. This is the primer bulb, so it goes in there like so, and then you can put the carburetor back, or the air cover back in place. Again, not a lot of torque on this because this is, I mean, this is a plastic cover. So, all right. So this one is the throttle cable. There was an indentation on the cable, so I know where it was before. I'm putting this back in exactly the same spot it was. Should be no changes from that standpoint. Okay, everything looks good there. All right. Well, it's going to take a little bit to get the fuel back in the carburetor. It may take a few cranks on this bad boy before we make that happen, but I'm hoping that this will be the end of the road and she'll start and stay running for me. Let's give it a shot. Success. Get her done. Thanks for watching.